You've read Malazan, Book of the Fallen? Okay, then, is Esselmon's Path to Ascendancy series worth your time? Today, I answer that question, even for those of you who haven't read any Malazan yet. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm glad to have you here with me today as I share a review, spoiler-lite, of a book I recently enjoyed. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Thanks. So I'm talking to you about Dancer's Lament, Book 1 of Ian C. Esselmon's Path to Ascendancy series, part of the greater Malazan universe. This was published in 2016, and the genre is epic fantasy. This will be spoiler-lite, but at the end of the episode, I do have some full spoil comments. I'll warn you when that's there. You'll be able to jump out if you haven't read the book yet. So why did I read the book? I've committed to a full read of the works of Malazan by both Steven Erikson and Ian C. Esselmont. A couple years back, I dove into the 10-book core series, Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, a challenge that many people tried to wave me off of, but I was like, nah, I like a challenge. I'm going in. And so glad I did, because I really enjoyed that series. But it was not the easiest to get through. It's so deep, so dense, so wonderfully written, so much to it. One of the most challenging fantasy series I've ever read and enjoyed. But there were times, literally, I felt my brain was starting to leak, to bleed. It's just working overtime to comprehend it all. However, ever since completing those first 10 books, everything else I've read in Malazan has just been a treat. The novels of the Malazan Empire series and the first 2 books of the Carcanis trilogy have simply been built on what was laid out already in Book of the Fallen. So I put all that effort into Book of the Fallen, and I'm reaping the benefits as I enjoy more and more of these books that are just a lot of fun to read now. But they're not just fun. They're adding tons of richness and understanding to everything I've read before. It's just making the original books that much greater, while these all stand on their own as being fantastic epic fantasy. The novels of the Malazan Empire series showed me what happened with various characters from Malazan Book of the Fallen who appeared at some point and then went elsewhere. They left that story. They weren't gone, they were just gone from those books, and the novels of the Malazan Empire tell us where they went, what else they did, other fascinating stories to follow. The Carcanis trilogy is an origin story for the Teist, or Tisti, however you want to pronounce it, and many other immortal and long-lived characters, with events whose impacts are still felt thousands of years later. Okay, so Carcanis trilogy, thousands of years in the past, compared to the events in Book of the Fallen. Now, as Dancer's Lament kicks off the Path to Ascendancy series, I discover Esselmont in these books is giving us an exceptional story that turns out to be the origin of a whole bunch of the mortal, shorter-lived characters from Malazan Book of the Fallen. More pieces of the puzzle, and it's just sweet. But an extra note here. There's enough to enjoy in this one novel so far that I've read in Path to Ascendancy that most fantasy readers will find Dancer's Lament a great story all on its own, even if it's the very first Malazan book you've ventured into. That's saying something about the quality of this book. The setting of Dancer's Lament is the city of Li Heng, pretty much in the center of the continent of Kwantali. These are places you will have already experienced if you read Esselmont's novels of the Malazan Empire. The time is some years prior to the founding of the Malazan Empire. Here's my spoiler-lite summary. Genuinely, this book is only fully appreciated if you have first read Esselmont's novels of the Malazan Empire, giving you an introduction to Li Heng and this region of Kwantali, as well as interaction with many of the core characters who appear in this book. And if you've also read the first two books of the Carcanis trilogy, so that you fully appreciate other aspects that you learn about Li Heng in this novel. Again, those aren't all necessary to enjoy the book, but they will allow you to enjoy it more. At the core, this novel is the story of a young, ambitious assassin, Doran Rav, as he tries to make a name for himself, choosing the city of Li Heng as the place to hang his shingle and get established. In the process of this, he's going to develop a connection with a young mage he runs into, goes by the name of Wu, an eccentric and quite talented Dalhanese individual who appears to have grand ambitions, some of which appear to include Doran. These two young people, through their activities, end up rubbing elbows with a bunch of the movers and shakers of Li Heng and the world around them, including the protectress of Li Heng and its 5 powerful city mages. The backdrop this is all set upon is a power struggle between the independent city-state of Li Heng and the neighboring nation of Itko Khan, whose king has decided to expand his influence, as kings are wont to do, by taking over Li Heng. These events will introduce us to the political, social, and economic state of things for many of the people in Kwantali, which will end up having a direct impact on some of the motivations behind the later founding of the Malazan Empire. I could tell you a lot more. There's a ton of fascinating details to this novel, but spoiler light. Again, if you've read it, stick around for a full spoil at the end. There is great depth to this story, as we first experience the fun and mystery just on the surface, with this young assassin and young mage trying to navigate through a world of societal upheaval and war. But when you realize what you're really reading, and who you're really reading about, and the ramifications of everything that is going on regarding later books, which you may have already read, maybe haven't, but whoa, so much here. Let's talk about the characters. As with any Malazan novel, there are a bunch of fascinating and very cool characters here, and they are very well fleshed out. The banter between characters is a trademark of Malazan, and it's here, whether between Doran and Wu, or between the various other city mages, or even the occasional interjections from Sister Knight or Relanderus, with various others. They're just gold and make this so entertaining to read. Again, spoiler light, so I can't go into these characters too much at this time. But I want to share here that what I enjoyed best was seeing characters that we will meet much later in the other books. But here we're seeing them in an earlier iteration, and how they are both true to what we know, yet appropriately younger and less developed in their perspective on things. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It felt very natural, a good reflection of what the passing of time and the experiences they'll go through will do to them, will mature them, will change them. I honestly do enjoy reading Esselmont more than Erickson. Can I say that? Is that Malazan sacrilege? Esselmont's writing is a bit more fast-paced, a little more action-focused, a little less philosophical. It's more focused on just the events the characters are going through. I honestly get drawn in more to these books than what Erickson writes. Though honestly, Erickson is much deeper and more profound in what he brings to the page. That said, it's simply easier to read and enjoy what Esselmont writes. There's a real place for that. For themes in this book, I will pull up 4. The dynamics of power, because we see a lot of different people in different phases of power, different positions, and how they use it and what they do with it and what it does to them is clearly on display. Loyalty and betrayal is a theme, because we've got people really stepping up to be loyal. We've got others really turning and putting the dagger in the back, and the highs and lows that come of this is truly emphasized, and certainly one perspective is elevated a little more than the other, and yet it's almost like there's a place for both in this world. Chaos and opportunity would be a theme, because we got a lot of chaos going on in this book, and some are finding opportunities hidden within. Finally, the novel is part of a series called The Path to Ascendancy. So, ascendancy and transformation would be a theme, as certain individuals are working towards raising themselves up, being transformed in the process. We have different characters in this book who are already at various different levels of ascendance, and some who are perhaps just getting started. And to see what it takes to do that, what the goals are, where it takes you along the way, it's fascinating, fun to read. Warnings? Well, there's graphic violence in here, just like there is in any Malazan novel. We've got dark magic and elements of the supernatural involved. There's a lot of death. We're dealing with mortality, but we're also dealing with the afterlife. What comes next? What is beyond? All of these things, if that makes you a little uncomfortable, stay away from this novel. Trust me. My rating and my recommendation, absolutely 5 stars. Probably my favorite Malazan read since finishing the original 10 of Malazan Book of the Fallen. Anyone who has come to enjoy the gritty, dark fantasy world of Malazan is going to have a ton of fun here, find so much to enjoy. But even fantasy fans, as I said at the beginning, those of you who've just heard about Malazan, but you've never tried any of it, if you were to dabble in this book, there's plenty for you to find appreciation for. Seriously, have a good time. It might be a great alternate entry to the world of Malazan. All right, if you have not read this book, this is where you stop. You got to jump out now before I ruin things. But thanks for being here. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe. Thanks.
The Spoiler Room.
So you've read this already, huh? You stuck around? Let's talk about, oh my goodness, the beginning of so many key characters in the Malazan world. Doran Rav, and how he takes on the Nom de Guerre dancer by the end of the book. I saw it coming a mile away, but I still loved when it actually hits. Woo! Where he came up with that name. But we all know this is going to be Kalanved, the one-day emperor and founder of the Malazan Empire. He's a hoot, and seeing him in ways that you never got to appreciate before is awesome, but also seeing the way he and Dancer begin this relationship, which so much better explains the way they interact with each other in Malazan Book of the Fallen. Dassam, who will become first sword of the Malazan Empire, seeing his origin story here and his very early on connection to Hood. Cool. But also interacting right away with Doran and Wu. I mean, these guys go back. Then we've got Eiko, the Connie's sword dancer, who at the end of the book adopts the new name that others have given her, Shimmer. I did not see that coming, and I went, I know that person. Now, that leads me to also enjoying the great tie-ins with the Crimson Guard here. We're seeing them well back before they take that horrific vow. They're just a mercenary group for hire. We see the roots of why they're going to have issues with the Malazans here. But we get to see characters who we know will later become Crimson Guard, and even hear them pondering those possibilities. So, we got to meet Shimmer, but we also meet Smokey, one of the 5 city mages, who later will be in the Guard. Learning that Shalmanat was Taist-Leo-san, that was fascinating. Back in Malazan Book of the Fallen, they made no sense to me at all. Having read the Carcanus trilogy books that are out so far, now I get so much more. And I loved having this connection here in Li Heng. So this would have made no sense to me earlier in my reading experience, but because of what I've been through in these other books, it was an excellent addition of richness to this story. I really enjoyed having so much focus on Silk. We do see Silk much later in time in the novels of the Malazan Empire, so having this earlier rendition of him was terrific. Also, in those later novels, we see the freeing of Rolandorus. Now we got to see how he was imprisoned in the first place. All these origin tales are great. Finally, I will toss out my value for meeting Sister Night here. Or shall we just go ahead and call her Night Jill? In Gardens of the Moon, she was just an enigmatic mystery to me, wiped off in like an opening scene, never understanding what this was about. And as she's still involved then, through a blended character, it's still, I did not understand Night Chill. Even some throwback, really back in the past prologues and stuff with Night Chill didn't help. This book, I got to understand this character a little better. And what I saw, I liked. I appreciated having reasons to enjoy Night Chill. So, excellent additional piece of the puzzle. Well done, Elsamont. Now, I want to speak about Wu. Interesting seeing him stumble along here in the early days, trying to live up to the vision in his head for what could be. And that vision isn't totally clear yet. He's still pulling it together. But he clearly is convinced he has a grand destiny waiting for him, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to take whatever risk to fulfill it. A path to power, perhaps. A path to perhaps doing better than the idiots he sees around him so horribly mangling the world. Perhaps. He seems willing to do things others wouldn't risk or haven't even thought of yet, as we see him dabbling in shadow, and even these early interactions with the Dark Hounds. We know so much more is to come here because of reading Malazan Book of the Fallen. So to see these first baby steps, it makes it that much cooler. My final point, we get to see the origin of the Talons, dancers, eventual secret police, because when we first come into Malazan Book of the Fallen, they've mostly been eradicated. That's the end of the Talons. So here's where they're coming about. How Talons become a thing in the first place is a touching part of this story. Seeing Dancer trying to protect a friend, someone who showed him kindness, only to see her brutalized just because she was important to him. That's a lesson Dancer will take to heart. And the impact is shown through the Talons. All right, that's what I have for you today. What are your thoughts about my thoughts? What are your thoughts about Dancer's Lament? Use that comment box. I always love to see what you have to say, and I do respond to each and every comment eventually. Look down in the show notes for other ways you can interact with Zach and I. There's an invitation to our Discord server where we continue to talk about all sorts of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, and other nerdy things, along with lots of other people. So come join us there. Links to our social media. Really, X is the place that we're most prominent. So if you want to engage with us, I recommend that. Blue Sky, we're there too pretty regularly. Others, not so much. I don't even bother checking my Facebook page anymore. We do have a Patreon link. If you want to go next level and support us keeping this content coming out, that's where you check out Patreon. Thanks for watching. Enjoy Malazan. I do. We'll talk to you next time.